Torture Place is a play about 3 adult siblings. It's a homecoming play. They've come home ostensibly to celebrate their mum's 60th birthday. At least that's what she believes, but it's not a pure celebration. It's also an intervention because mum is a compulsive hoarder and the house is now out of control and the 3 kids are going to clear it up. And she doesn't know. It's a play about compulsive hoarding, and I guess that braids together 3 big conversations that Australia's having now. That's capitalism gone wrong, it's real estate, and it's mental illness. So obviously I had to write a comedy about it. It's really hard to get new Australian work off the ground. I mean, it's hard to make a play generally, but new Australian work, getting it developed to the stage where it can actually be put on a main stage theatre like MTC, it's a small miracle that even happens at all, because it does take a lot of money, and that money translates to time, and that time is for development. I've been writing and redrafting and developing this play for probably like 1.5 years now, and the only way I could have done it is with support and backing. So Next Stage being there right from the start, saying that we want your work, that you're going to be commissioned alongside, some of the greats, which is still wild, is a real shot in the arm, but also a huge necessity in getting a play like Torture Place off the ground. So I'm a big theatre nerd. Like, I'll often be that weirdo lurking around in foyers just constantly around Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, everywhere else, because I just love watching plays. I didn't get that many opportunities to see them when I was growing up, but as soon as I went to the big smoke of Queensland, Brisbane, I was just completely immersed and captivated by theatre and what's possible in Australian theatre. And I think Australian theatre, just kind of similarly to our national identity, is wild and strange and original and so unique. And so as someone who's come from different realms of writing, journalism and television script writing and column writing and books, I've kind of always been like a sick little voyeur looking into the theatre scene and going, what are they doing? How did they do that? And then as you hop between writing genres, for someone like me, I instinctively know whether a story should be in this form or this format. And for Torture Place, I knew instinctively that this needed to be a play. And in the broader Australian theatre scene, something that I've really enjoyed seeing and relished seeing is how much of our diversity is up on stage, whether it's First Nations stories from people from a migrant background, people from the disability community. It's a much more dynamic kind of representation of what Australia is compared to, say, television and film sometimes. Those realms are catching up, but I kind of think theatre is where it's at. It's been a tough time, I think, in Australian theatre, and especially for playwrights, with organisations being kaput, with arts funding bodies no longer existing all of a sudden. And that's why something like MTC's Next Stage has been so important in picking up the slack. But those challenges are real for the Australian playwriting community. But I think great art is often made under great pressure. Okay, so when I started writing this play, I had no idea what I'm doing. Arguably, I still don't know what I'm doing. But one of the great things that I loved from this development and this playwriting process has been the discovery of actually working with the community right from the start. So the last big projects that I did before this play were within the realm of television, and television is very much within a very tight writer's room. And if you're just a screenwriter, not a producer, you hand your scripts over and then it's like, farewell. But with playwriting, you're with the director, with dramaturgs, with actors very early on, and they are feeding into that process. For someone who doesn't come from that background, that can be, well, look, it just was a pretty confronting process. Like, don't talk about my work yet. But it means that these people bring like their very specific skill set into the writing and developing process. Actors have to obviously embody the roles that they're playing, and they not just see, but feel the character from within. So if something jars for them, and they let you know, you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I see that? So having that resource there so early on is something that I'm not used to, or that I wasn't used to, but something for which now I'm incredibly grateful and feel like I can't, won't do without. My style of writing in Torch the Place is a little bit deranged. It's trying to find the humour within the horror, and I guess that's kind of one of my MOs with writing generally. I'm drawn to serious stories and serious subject matter, but you always have to find the absurd in it too. And I think that's with all comedy and drama. You know, if you might be writing comedy, but it needs to be rooted within actual dramatic tension. You might be writing a drama, but if you don't find the comedy, it's a real punish, and that's not how real life works either. You know, we're always laughing at the most screwed up things, and that's what I wanted to do here. And at the same time, I used to work in academia, so I'm a bit of a nerd. So I'm always trying to wrestle with what is the thesis of what we're writing about. What is the meaning beyond the plot? What are we actually trying to say? Without being didactic, without being prescriptive, what do we want to leave the audience feeling and talking about in the foyer? That's something that I think about a lot. One of the first things that I wrote in this play is that the actors should almost always be in motion, because this is a really physical play. The story is that these are people clearing out a hoarder's house. That is not a sedentary task that's ahead of them. They need to be constantly doing something. But beyond that, I also think that it's really important for playwrights to look at opportunities where actors are communicating beyond dialogue. Silence can often say more than dialogue. Are they responding with movement instead of dialogue? One of the things I know about myself is I tend to overwrite dialogue, and I'm always looking for opportunities for actors to be saying something with their bodies instead. So there's one scene in the play where minutes pass by and there's no dialogue. It's just one actor on stage moving through a series of conundrums, and through that physicality we're told so much more than anything I could have put in her mouth. So in the rehearsal room, it's such a joy just having the actors suddenly inhabit these characters, and of course they'll improv things, and often they'll come up, like a line will just bubble up from the comedy of what's happening. I'm like, so I'm gonna steal that and take credit for it because it's so funny, it's so genius. And I would have never discovered that because I'm not an actor inhabiting these roles. But you know, when you've got people like Michelle Lim Davidson and Diana Lynn and Fee Choi Max Brown and Charles Wu just going off and at a crackling pace, you know, that they're gonna be coming up with stuff that you're like, let's incorporate that. Or it's when you hear the lines for the first time through their mouths and through their actions that you're like, that doesn't work. I can see what I was trying to do as a playwright, but that does not work for the actor and it doesn't work for the character. So you're constantly going, oh, it's that feeling of mortification that makes you want to adjust things very quickly. And I think epigraphs are helpful because even if they're not performed in the play, they distill in, well, at least the playwright's mind, what we're trying to do with this play. I wanted to include a quote from Doctors Randy and Gale, who wrote this book called Stuff, which is one of the first and only kind of modern proper examinations of what compulsive hoarding disorder actually is. And it dispels so many kind of myths that we've built up through assumptions and through popular culture about what this condition is and where it comes from. And they talk about it as you know, being the disorder of the decade, if not the century, because it's this conspiracy of factors of poor mental health with an abundance of stuff in the world. And that's really what we're looking at in this play, the collision of those two forces. And then finally, I wanted to include a quote from Confucius, not just because I'm Chinese, but because there is this quote that my mum actually had around our house, which is, everything has beauty, but not everyone sees it. And I wanted to keep that close to my heart as well, because in all of the horror, the more that you understand about compulsive hoarding, the more you realize that as much as it's a disorder, it's also in some ways a beautiful mind that sees the world in ways that other people simply do not. And in those lenses is a form of beauty.